Hello, Mrs. Q.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming to meet together to discuss the lesson that we reviewed in our pre-conference about 2 weeks ago. And this is the lesson that I observed, you remember, on June 7th.
Yeah.
It was about 10:15 in the morning. And the objective of the lesson was to know that written numbers are symbols for number quantities, and to reinforce and work on writing 0 to 10 with support. As we discussed in our pre-conference meeting, we decided to look at the principle of learning of concrete to semi-abstract to abstract progression.
Right.
And so we reviewed those principles of learning, and we picked this one because our focus is obviously the early childhood classroom. And we know that we're dealing with concrete materials which anchor images and experiences that later really connect and are summoned by the abstractions that refer to them. So the research shows, as you so well know, that this really creates the building for learning in a powerful way.
Right.
So, is there anything that you would like to add about why we picked this principle of learning?
Well, I think especially for my students at this age, even though they're all, age-wise, they're all the same, there's so many different ability levels and different stages of development. So this is great to give all of them an opportunity to shine and to help us to be able to identify strengths, weaknesses, and maybe encourage those that need, and then challenge those that could use, the challenge. So I think it's good to pick for this age group.
So you're pleased with the principle that we settled on?
Without a doubt, this age group definitely fits right in there.
Yes. So the objectives that you developed for the lesson, could you tell me a little bit more about those objectives?
Well, there were several objectives, because again, with the ability levels, and I like to differentiate and set off a overarching one, where, we were looking for them to be able to get an understanding of a relationship between quantity and number, how many, as well as having the simple, I don't want to say simple, to have the objective of being able to recognize the number from 0 to 10.
Right.
And then, of course, be able to take that knowledge of recognition and then write it, and to get an understanding that that symbol for that number represents the quantity. That, I don't know if I worded it quite in the official objective that I wrote down, because I don't remember, but that's really what our goal was, to get them to understand that this symbol represents a number which represents the quantity. And, and then again, for some of us, it was just to be able to identify the number and write it.
Right, and I do see in what I've brought with me today that you have copies of.
Oh, yes.
The pre-conference.
I didn't go through it, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, of course, the pre-conference information that you filled out, and then the report of the observation.
Right.
And so here we are today to
I just
have
couldn't remember
proposed.
exactly how I worded it in the official,
But no, that, yes,
teaching
but that
standards,
is,
the verbiage of it.
that is how
Sorry.
you worded it, Mrs. Kim, no worries. So do you feel that you met the objectives for the lesson?
I believe so. I think we were able to use the manipulatives and the hands-on experience to then be able to figure out which child needs a little bit more. So in that respect, I think the objectives were met. We were able to then see that some of us were still stuck in that concrete stage, and they weren't able to, move on to writing the symbol to represent that quantity, because they were stuck there. So that helped us. By doing this, we were able to pinpoint who needed a little bit extra encouragement, and that's where Mrs. H has always been great about jumping in and helping out. and then, doing our little anecdotal notes saying who needed, so we can go back and address that later on as well in other
Right.
opportunities. So I think we met our objectives, for
How-
overall as a group.
Absolutely, yes. How would you describe where you started with the concrete, with the apples? There was excitement when those
Oh.
apples came out.
Well, again, apples are a treat for just about every one of the students, all of them just love them. And again, it's a fall theme, so pulling them out in June was a really special treat for them. So what we did was we just put out, as you know, we just put out the baskets in our small groups
Mhm.
with a variety of different types and colors of apples, and allowed the children to explore them, hands-on, smell them. And then we gave them that opportunity to select which color apple, and we started out with just one characteristic of color.
Mhm.
Because again, I do have a variety of learners. So we let them pick which color was their favorite, and we had them physically pull that out, and then we put it on the table and we counted how many reds were our favorites, how many greens, and how many yellows. And we did have that one Macintosh that was the oddball, but there's gotta be one,
yes.
but that's okay, that's what life is. So we did count that one as well. And then we, as a group, counted how many of the entire class, how many of the red ones, yellow and green and Macintosh, that we were gonna be our favorites. So we gave them that hands-on, real-life experience of counting and touching and picking their favorite. Then, of course, Mrs. H took them, as you know, down to the kitchen, to the
Yes.
Fran, the food service woman, to get them clean. So they were gonna be our afternoon snack for tasting, because that's what kept them hooked on the line.
Oh, I did notice they watched where those apples were headed, and
That's-
you reassured them that they would reappear.
Well, yeah, because otherwise I'd have been in really big trouble. They were really, and it was a great little nutritious snack, and again, helped them, tide them over for the afternoon as well, eating them. But then what we did was moving it from there, while
Right.
those were being washed. I'm sorry, I'm jumping you, I'm
No,
sorry.
go to the semi, I was going to say, how did you move to the semi?
Because it just kind of
That's
went, because I had to have
Mhm.
something for them to do while they were getting washed.
Oh, yes.
And they were timing me probably. So, yeah, then what we did was we just took the paper manipulatives of the different color apples. And again, Mr. McIntosh was a challenge. But we were able to then have them take their favorite apple, paper-wise, and again, make that chart on the wall, on the dry erase board. So that when they put it up there, they still had that visual of the, how many red, how many green, how many yellow apples, and again, Macintosh.
Right.
And then what we did was we took that and let them again count them, as opposed to just doing it on the table. We did it on the board, so the whole class could see, and we counted together, and then they counted. I counted, they counted, and then we counted, as you
Yes.
know, several times.
Yes, and I
Um,
see that you Mrs. H took a picture
Yeah,
of that
that's
chart. and
pretty
you
much
brought
what that-
Yes, well, it was part of your artifact, yes.
Yeah, so they kind of gave them an idea that they could visualize it. Now they've had an opportunity to touch it and set it out and see it physically. Now they got to see a representation of it that, of course, stayed on the board for quite some time. And then they were able to take turns and write, count, and then write, to the best of their ability, the digit, the number that corresponded to that quantity. Some of us were more successful than others, but that's the beauty of dry erase and the whiteboard, because mistakes can always be erased and you learn from your mistakes. So they were able to build that confidence, go back and count it again. Okay, that is 3. So they were able to, build that confidence, that math skill, that try and error, test out, oh, I think it's 3. Oh, it is 3. So I thought that was great. I thought that was a good way to move semi-abstract while they were waiting for their concrete
Right.
snack.
Yes, to make that bridge, yes. I noticed in the observation that A had some questioning, and I wanted to ask you to reflect on how you approached her dilemma, with her, and how you guided her to resolution of it.
Well, as we said, the baskets had a variety of different sizes and shapes and colors, and
Mhm.
even some textures. Some did have, were smooth, some were shiny. And I thought that was great. I saw her, she looked perplexed as to trying to match up the color of the apple, because as I said, I'd only given them that one characteristic to
Right.
sort by. And in talking to her and in, engaging her, she gave me her thought process was, well, how can I put this red big apple in with that small red apple? When she saw that there was a larger green apple that was the same size. So she was actually taking it to the next level and thinking, gee, yes, it's red, but it's not the same size as those other reds, but it's the same size as this one over here. So she was actually looking at another characteristic that we had not even yet introduced or put into the class
Yes.
for the lesson. She was already trying to match it. So in talking to her, she figured it was a better match to match up the size, because there was such a great difference between the other red one that was left in the basket and the one that was there. So I thought that was just wonderful to see that she was able to take it on her own and match it up and be able to give me her reasoning. It wasn't that just, oh, I'm gonna mix and match. She actually had the reason because of the size, and that was great, because, that shows me that she's ready to move forward. And maybe I can challenge her further by giving her other manipulatives and other experiences. There's more than one characteristic, more than two. And for kindergarten, up to 5. So that would be great. That would be great if she could, be ready for kindergarten and already matching up 5 different attributes, besides just the color and
Yes.
size. Looking at weight and length and all that other stuff. So I was really happy with that.
That was great.
That's
I did note how you were able to move the discussion into a more advanced mode for her, which, as you're saying, is really showing her preparation for kindergarten. And I noticed with another student, S, that when you were at the part of the lesson where he needed to write on the, counting them up and then write the numeral, that there was a little bit of a struggle with that.
Yeah, I did notice that too. So what we did with him was we brought him back then to the concrete by giving him the apples. And we actually had the manipulative apples. I've got that whole big bushel of manipulative apples that they come in all different sizes and, again, shapes and colors. So I brought him back to hands-on experience of putting it back on the table and counting out the 3, the same that he saw on the chart, but he was physically putting those 3 yellow apples down, and he was able to count it out that way. So for him, I would work more on his manipulative skills and more counting and giving him more opportunities to do the hands-on counting. The more experience he gets, I believe the more confident he'll get in being able to visually count by just semi-abstract. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, I see there's 3 there, without needing the whole physical apple to count it. And then, of course, for him, actually writing the digit 3 might take some more encouragement, some more practice when he's ready for it.
Pardon me, I have a bit of a cough. So how would you take that and extend that as maybe part of the lesson itself for students such as S that are having a little trouble making that bridge?
Well, I would definitely leave the manipulatives out. I would not just pack it up and say, okay, they all know, they all count it, they all touch the apple. We're lucky to have those small manipulatives that resemble the apples to represent them. And that again gives them that hands-on experience. And I do believe that the more experience that he has to touch and count and group and sort, the more confidence he'll build. So I would keep them out and give him not just those apples, because that was the tie-in for the lesson, but to expand it to other things. you know, maybe he can be the one that now passes out the napkins. He'll be the counter. He'll physically be able to do that, and give him that opportunity that when I say I need 5 napkins, that you can count the 5 physical napkins, and be able to, you know, match that up and put it into a real life experience for him and put it into the real world where he can again count out, oops, and then trial and error. You know, I only counted 4, so he'll be able to figure that out on his own. But we can maybe just support him more in that way.
And then how about within the classroom itself, types of activities to hone in on the practice with writing the numerals or making the symbols using other modalities perhaps?
Yeah. You know what, that's, giving opportunities for, again, the hands-on experience, things like, you know, the sandpaper numbers would be great. Giving more opportunities for those children like A, who's ready for that, who's, you know, really excited to write all her numbers out.
Yes.
But, you know, maybe, it's a good idea, I gotta think. Like, it's a whole number center. You know how we always have the letter of the week, but now, you know, a number center where Mrs. A and I could monitor, you know, change it up, you know, just to keep it interesting. Shaving cream, cover the table with shaving cream and, you know, give them a number, call out a number, make it a game, and you have to write that digit, whatever it might be, or maybe I could have like a bag and I could pull out 2 bananas. And they can see that I have 2 bananas maybe and count 2 and then write the number. And then we could come along and see who has the right number.
I do remember on the order that we used our Title II funds for, there was something whiteboard.
The whiteboard paddles.
That's it.
Yeah, those would be great if we could figure out a way to make sure we get those. Because as I said, the whiteboard is great, but it's hard when you're waiting your turn and you know that number. But if we could get those, just imagine, we could get those and we have dry erase, plenty of markers and erasers. Because again, we learn by our mistakes, right? We do make them, that's how we learn. So if you have that, my idea is if you have the paddle, and again, we have a number. Originally I was thinking this for letters, but we could make this in for number recognition.
Why not?
And have them each write the particular number and hold it up. And then, of course, visually, Mrs. H and I will be able to see almost immediately who, you know, is able to be at that, you know, point of the game, or who might need to, you know, go back a little bit and maybe isn't ready to move on to the next, you know, state, you know, the abstract part. So maybe they still need a little bit of, you know, right in front of them. And that's where pulling something out of the bag as opposed to me just verbally giving a number.
And
I could do a little bit of both.
Sure, I'm making a note. Whiteboard paddles, because I do remember seeing them on the list. And I will check to see where they are in that ordering process. Sometimes it takes longer than we would like.
That's
but
all right.
we'll do our best. So, to summarize our meeting today, we honed in on Piaget. We always like to talk about Piaget, but it lends itself to that whole focus of the principle of learning on concrete, semi-abstract to abstract progression. And in this lesson, you could really see that happen. So we spoke about what we could do in the future. You really had a great idea about looking to strengthen that connection with writing the numbers and how to differentiate for students who still aren't there yet in their developmental phase, and that to have a number center and whiteboard paddles. And we'll see if we can even get some shaving cream and extra sandpaper.
That would be great. Those
that would
kind of
be a good thing.
consumables, you know, if we have them, then we can use them more readily and you know.
Right, they're good strategies
Right,
to
take
use
those
in future
teachable moments
lessons.
and schmather the table with some shaving cream and, you know, get our numbers going. And you know, for even the sandpaper numbers.
Sure.
You know, if you could get us some sandpaper, I have no problem cutting out
Making
the
lots
digits.
of notes, Mrs. Q's,
Okay.
paper and
Just,
shaving paper.
again, those are
So-
just things that, you know, yes, we have the manipulatives and yes, we have, but that hands-on, touching and writing and all of that is really what's gonna, you know,
Right, it
really
really-
make that association for my little ones between the quantity, the number, you know, how many, how, you know.
Yes.
So, and you were saying about Piaget, you know, we can't skip a step. So if one of my little ones still needs to get a firmer foundation in one, I wanna help them do that, but I don't wanna hinder the others from
Absolutely.
moving forward because they're ready. So
Absolutely.
stuff like that would be great.
Well, let me ask you, do you have any concerns or anything that you would like my help with, or any assistance I can give you?
No, I think some of the ideas that we've been talking about, just going back and forth, and
Mhm.
sometimes we just need this whole, you know, observation and us talking. We need to have that looking out from the outside in, you know,
Mhm.
because sometimes we just, sometimes I just do things because that's what we've always done. So
Right.
it's nice to have somebody come in and say, did you think about this or think about that, and not, you know.
So how do you feel about this observation
Well,
cycle?
I'm always looking for a new idea, you know, a new way to look at, way of looking at a different angle. So I appreciate you giving me your input and listening to mine.
Oh, you've shared
You
excellent
know,
insights,
I know
really,
I
thank
rattle
you.
sometimes, but I get excited about some things, and,
No,
and
your,
that's
your excitement comes through, and that's why I wanted to really compliment you on your lesson. It was well organized, thought out, you moved smoothly, especially
Thank you.
considering the young children that are here and how they really are on different developmental levels. You move smoothly through setting up the lesson, through the concrete hands-on, to the paper apples to represent the semi-abstract, and then really moving to the abstract of actually putting the numerals with it, and then, you know, really practicing writing them, and you and Mrs. H, under your direction, you really supported the students who were struggling with that.
Thank you. We really
Oh, you're
tried and we
welcome.
worked, and the apples turned out to be a great hit. Because again, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't get those apples back for
exceptional
taste
snack
testing.
time here in this
That it
classroom.
was.
So we're going to, I made notes, as you know, to look into really pursuing where we are with the whiteboard paddles, and looking at supporting you with creating a number center. And I know that there is a team meeting in about a week and a half. It's on the,
Oh, okay, I
we
think
had
so.
changed the date, so now
Right,
it's
I
about a
think
week and a
that,
half
yeah, that sounds about
from
right.
now. So how about we do this? If you don't mind, I've made some notes, but as you're reflecting about this, if there's anything else that you think you'd like to do in terms of a number center or other materials, please send me an email.
Okay.
And I'm going to make many notes here, but I'm going to put this on the calendar for the agenda for our team meeting, so we can talk about this a little bit more.
Okay,
and
and if
follow up.
it's all right with you, I'll bounce that off of, you know,
Please.
my colleagues,
Of
and, you
course.
know, in case there's something that, again, it's nice to have that bouncing back and forth, and if they come up with a few things, maybe I could throw that on your list too.
I'm
And then
open
I
to
email?
all suggestions,
Okay,
absolutely.
you never know, they
It's
might come
true.
up with something just as good, and maybe less expensive than my shaving cream.
And that's always beneficial. But I just, again, thank you, Mrs. Q. This was an excellent meeting, and we appreciate the chance to be able to collaborate.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.